These are fluted chalices done with a sorbet fluting tool. The first 5 of these ended up in the fireplace, and the last 3 sold at ArtFest. And they were the most expensive items I had to sell at ArtFest, so I thought, well, geez, maybe I better make some more of these. These are going to be through and through fluted vessels with a little chalice goblet shape on top. And then the bottoms here, these are going to be through and through flutes. That means I'm going to Forstner bit a hole right here all the way up to about there. And then I'm going to carve out each one of these flutes individually so that you see air in them. And I'll show you some a few minutes later. But it looks like when you're looking through light at them, it looks like diamonds. And man, they just sparkle. They made ideal Father's Day gifts. I guess that's why all 3 of the first ones sold. Anyway, what I'm putting on now is a new finish for me. It's Aero Marine 2-part epoxy. And it's absolutely, totally water clear. It starts setting in about an hour. And it's a penetrating epoxy that actually goes into the wood. And my hope is that I'm going to be able to get the epoxy to penetrate into the fluted area. And then after it's set, I will have much more firmer flutes, and it'll be easier for me to carve through the flute and get the diamond effect with the through and through. So I'm just rubbing the epoxy into the wood, hoping that helps it to penetrate a little better. And at the same time, when I rub this epoxy in, I can feel when it's starting to set. It starts to set in about 45 minutes to an hour, depending on whatever the warmth of the room is. And the room here is about 69 right now, so it's setting a little faster than it did last week when I did some epoxy on a piece at temperature 60 degrees. So I'm starting to feel it set right now. I've been rubbing this epoxy in there for about, now maybe 30 minutes or so. So we got a few more sheets of paper towel here, so we'll be able to get this rubbed off just fine. Just rub off as much as you can. Absolutely seems like a total waste of finish, but it's not. The reason it's not is because if you don't rub it off, it takes you virtually hours for each of these pieces to sand them. It's just not worth leaving it on. And since this epoxy is a penetrating epoxy, the important part of the epoxy, the part that stiffens the wood, actually goes into the top layer of wood itself. And so that's its primary use here, is to stiffen this wood. We're working in black walnut, which isn't an extremely strong wood, but it likes to be carved. So it's a great wood for making flutes on, because you can make those flutes sometimes without causing cross-threading, which is a major problem with the sorbet machine or any other fluting machine. But you can see these flutes are pretty neat here. They're very regular. There's no cross-threading at all, and I'm hoping they're deep enough so that I can Forstner bit the bottom hole and make through and through flutes without too much trouble. But we'll demonstrate that a little bit later after we've let this epoxy set for 24 hours. We put it in front of a little heater and let it set up and cure, and in 24 hours it's partly cured, not totally, but partly cured, and hard enough to sand, and hard enough to cut the through and through portion of the flute. So let's set that one in front of the heater. We'll finish drying this one off, and then we'll set it in front of the heater. Then we'll set it in front of the heater. Then we'll have all 3 in front of the heater, and we'll just let them sit for 24 hours, and we'll come back tomorrow morning at the same time, same place, and we'll put them back on the lathe, see if any of the flutes need cleaning up a little bit from any excess epoxy sitting on the surface. And then we'll Forstner bit the bottom hole, and after that we'll cut the through and through section of the flutes, and I'll show you what diamonds looks like. on a through-and-through fluted chalice with a long stem, all made with a Sorby fluting instrument. I'll probably show you that Sorby fluting tool at the same time, but it's downstairs, so we're not going to show it to you right now. All right, well, we got as much epoxy as we can get out of all the cracks on all three of these chalices, so we're going to set them in front of the heater, and we'll leave them set for 24 hours and revisit tomorrow morning. I just turn the heater on to low intermittent heat, and that just helps it cure a little bit faster. I always wear gloves with this procedure, but as you can see, this glove wasn't too much use. Anyway, we've got the heater on, we've got the heat going, we've got our 2-part epoxy on all three chalices, so we're all set for the next 24 hours, and I'll see you tomorrow morning. Cut!